Welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight, we journey to the East African coast to delve into the lives of the remarkable Swahili market women whose courage and determination have shaped the rhythm of this ancient shoreline for centuries. Imagine the sun rising slowly over the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean. Gentle waves lap against the hulls of dhows anchored in the harbor, their sails still resting after a long night of travel. The warm air is a tapestry of salt and spice, a fragrance carried on the morning breeze. From the shore, the calls of early fishermen drift across the sand, a prelude to the day's symphony, and in the distance, a new sound begins to grow. The gentle chatter of women arranging their wares baskets brimming with fruit, vibrant bundles of cloth, and stacks of handcrafted clay pots. Here, the day starts long before the market awakens fully, in a quiet ritual of preparation and anticipation. This market is more than just a place of commerce. It's a vibrant stage of life and ritual, a space where labor, trade, and culture are deeply intertwined. The women who walk these sandy paths know the weight of their goods, but they also carry the weight of their responsibilities, their families, and their heritage. Each step they take echoes centuries of practice, of knowledge passed down from mother to daughter. Their eyes are keen, constantly scanning for customers, watching rivals, and seeking opportunity in the ebb and flow of the crowd. At first, their voices are soft, like murmurs on the breeze. But as the sun climbs higher, they swell into a lively chorus of greetings, laughter, and the melodic calls of merchants displaying their goods. Karibu, come, see what I have today. This is a place where stories are told, not just in words, but in the goods that pass from hand to hand, in the intricate patterns of a kanga, in the unique shape of a pot. Stories are also read in the eyes of those who navigate this bustling space with a blend of pride and caution, strength and grace. Let's pause here for a moment. Imagine the soft crackle of a fire under a vast, starry sky. Feel the ocean breeze as it brushes past the coastline, carrying the scent of salt and clove. It's in this quiet space that we can truly appreciate the world we're about to enter. The life of a Swahili market woman is not for the faint of heart. The hours are long, stretching from dawn until dusk, and the competition is always fierce. A sharp mind and a resilient spirit are essential for survival. Yet, within this daily grind, there is a profound artistry. Every basket of mangoes, every pyramid of spices, every stack of textiles is arranged with meticulous care. It's a subtle performance, a display of skill, attention, and an innate understanding of beauty. This isn't just about selling. It's about presenting a piece of oneself, of one's culture. Here, fierce independence is woven tightly with a deep sense of community. Survival depends as much on the relationships you build as on the strength of your back and the shrewdness of your negotiations. These women are entrepreneurs, providers, and the keepers of tradition. Across the Swahili coast, from the historic island of Lamu down to bustling Mombasa and beyond, the markets echo with similar rhythms. Each town, each island has its own unique pulse, its own specific traditions and goods. But the core remains the same. The market woman, vigilant and fierce, shaping her world one transaction at a time. She is the central pillar of the local economy, the heart of her community. As we continue our journey, we will walk along the dusty lanes of these ancient trade hubs. We'll feel the sun's warmth on our skin and the rough, familiar texture of woven baskets under our hands. We will listen closely to the murmured stories of the women who came before, whose spirits still linger in the scent of cardamom and the bright colors of the fabrics. Their legacy is not written in books, but in the enduring spirit of their daughters and granddaughters who continue the trade today. Tonight, we journey not just to see, but to understand. We are here to listen, to learn, and to rest in the gentle, powerful wisdom of their world. We will explore their challenges, celebrate their triumphs, and honor the immense contribution they make every single day. So, find a comfortable spot and let the sounds of the coast wash over you. You are now under baobab skies, and the story begins now. Imagine the first light of dawn spilling like liquid gold across the red earth of the Swahili coast. This gentle light paints the streets of the market in a warm, ethereal glow. Here, women rise long before the sun, their bare feet whispering against the still cool sand as they make their way to the shore. They carry baskets heavy with the promise of the day's trade. Each load is more than just goods. It's a promise of sustenance, a testament to survival. For the market woman, the day that stretches before her is long, and the work unyielding. From the narrow, winding alleys lined with clay stalls to the open squares where traditional dhows unload their treasures from across the sea, every single step is measured, every glance purposeful. She navigates this space with an innate understanding, knowing her competitors as well as she knows the ebb and flow of the tide of buyers. One misstep, a misplaced call to a potential customer, or a delivery delayed by a moment, and the precious coins of the day can slip right through her fingers like grains of the very sand she walks upon. The stakes are high, and the margins incredibly thin. Let's pause here for a moment. Picture us, perhaps resting by a crackling fire under a canopy of stars. Close your eyes and imagine the distant, rhythmic hum of the ocean, mingling with the faint, far-off voices of vendors calling out their wares into the morning air. It's a symphony of commerce and nature, a soundscape that has echoed along this coast for centuries. Back in the market, the competition is fierce. Women from neighboring towns arrive with their own goods, each claiming a small corner of the bustling space. Each one is intimately familiar with the unique rhythm and the unwritten politics of this trade. Friendships in this environment can feel tentative, and alliances are often fragile, shifting with the day's fortunes. Beneath the surface-level chatter and the bursts of shared laughter, a quiet tension hums the unspoken awareness that the market will not favor those who falter, those who fail to act with precision, who miss a customer's lingering gaze or a subtle signal of interest, risk being overlooked entirely. Yet, amidst this intense rivalry, a surprising and beautiful camaraderie flourishes. The more experienced market women often take the younger ones under their wing, mentoring them in the subtle arts of the trade. They demonstrate how to balance a seemingly impossible load on their head with grace, how to arrange colorful textiles and spices to catch the wandering eye, and how to call out prices with a voice that carries both authority and warmth. Stories of success and failure are shared in whispers, weaving a vital network of knowledge that helps each woman navigate the unpredictable currents of daily commerce. Look closer and you'll see the artistry. A woman, her expression one of deep focus, balances a heavy basket on her head as if it were weightless. Her hands, weathered but nimble, arrange vibrant textiles and handcrafted pottery on her stall. The soft morning light catches the intricate patterns, making them irresistible. The physical demands of this life are immense. Long hours spent standing, lifting, and carrying bend the back and strain the shoulders. As the day wears on, the sand grows hotter under the blistering noon sun, and the calls of the vendors rise in a crescendo, competing with the oppressive heat. Every container of fragrant spices, every bundle of cloth, every delicate clay pot must be handled and displayed with the utmost care. A single mistake, a moment of distraction, can lead to shattered pottery, spilled goods, or a handful of lost coins, each one representing hours of hard work. But the market is so much more than just a place of labor. It is the very pulse of life itself. Children, with boundless energy, run between the stalls. Their laughter, a bright, clear sound that cuts through the noise of the traders. They play with small, discarded clay pots, mimicking the actions of their elders. Mothers keep a watchful eye on their little ones, effortlessly guiding them with a gentle hand while simultaneously tending to customers. Families are woven into the very fabric of the market's rhythm. Their presence is both a source of profound support and a heavy responsibility for the women who labor tirelessly alongside them. Let's take another pause. Feel the warmth of that imaginary fire. In this quiet moment, try to sense the vibrant pulse of the market, the gentle sway of hanging cloth in the sea breeze, the shimmer of freshly caught fish glistening like silver in the sun, the earthy aroma of spices and clay. It's a sensory world, rich and textured. Beyond the physical challenges of heat and dust, there is a constant, sharp awareness of risk. The threat of stolen coins, the pressure from aggressive competitors, and the constant, low-level disputes over precious stall space are everyday realities. Negotiation here is a delicate, intricate art form. The market woman must become an expert in human nature. She reads subtle gestures, deciphers the hidden meaning in a person's tone of voice, and anticipates the unspoken desires of a potential buyer. And she does all of this while physically carrying the weight of her goods and emotionally carrying the weight of her family's livelihood on her shoulders. She moves like water, flowing gracefully through the crowded stalls, constantly adjusting her position, offering a disarming smile here, a competitive price there, a measured compliment to a potential buyer. All the while, her mind is a whirlwind of calculation, striking the careful, precarious balance between generosity and gain. Her intelligence is not loud or boastful, but quiet and sharp as a knife. Her body is strong from years of labor, and her presence in her small corner of the world is undeniably commanding. As evening approaches, the light begins to soften once more. Shadows lengthen across the sandy lanes, and the frenetic rhythm of trade begins to slow, to change. The last of the buyers retreat to their homes, their baskets now full, and the market women begin the slow, methodical process of packing up their remaining goods. Yet, even in this quiet, weary hour, the work is not truly done. Now is the time for planning for tomorrow. Strategies are discussed in hushed, tired tones. New routes to the market are memorized. Alliances, tested during the day, are carefully reinforced for the battles of the next. For the Swahili market woman, life is measured in these endless cycles of labor, competition, and negotiation. It is a life defined by resilience, by a quiet cunning, and by an enduring, unbreakable spirit. Each new day brings with it a fresh set of challenges. Yet she endures. She must, because the market is not just a place of commerce, it is a stage where skill, wisdom, and raw courage are tested, proven, and celebrated every single day. As night finally settles over the coast, the market quiets completely. All that remains are the traces of the day's activity. A chaotic map of footsteps in the sand, scattered bits of straw, and the lingering, ghostly scent of spices hanging in the cool night air. Tomorrow will come, inevitably, and with it will come the same struggles, the same small triumphs, and the same timeless stories. The life of the market woman is relentless, a continuous cycle of effort and uncertainty. Yet, it is also a life rich with meaning. It teaches us profound lessons about independence, about perseverance, and about the quiet, immense power of those who labor, often unseen, shaping their world and ours from the ground up. The sun rises again over the Swahili coast, its golden light illuminating a world stirring to life. The market, the very heart of the community, begins to hum with the promise of another day. You can hear the cheerful greetings, the spirited haggling over prices, and the gentle clatter of clay pots being arranged for display. But if you listen closer, beneath this vibrant surface, you'll sense a delicate web of alliances and rivalries being woven between the women who command this space. These are not just idle friendships or petty squabbles. They are the very threads that form the backbone of survival. In a world where fortune can turn on a single missed sale or a whispered word, a market woman learns a crucial lesson from her very first day. To endure, she must master the intricate dance of cooperation and competition. Imagine the layout of the market. Certain corners are communal, spaces where stories and laughter are shared freely, but other spots, the prime locations, are fiercely defended territories. Women form alliances, often temporary, agreeing to share vital information, perhaps about a wealthy trader arriving on the next dhow, or a fresh supply of the most sought-after spices. But these alliances are as fragile as a sun-dried leaf. Betrayal can be swift and silent. A competitor might offer a slightly better price to a loyal customer you were about to serve. A misleading comment about the quality of your goods could be whispered to a potential buyer. In an instant, trust can dissolve like smoke, leaving behind a bitter sting. This is the constant tension, the unseen negotiation that dictates every move. And yet, this rivalry has a purpose. It sharpens skill. It forces a woman to be ever vigilant. She must learn the ebb and flow of customers like the tides. Know which products will catch the eye and sense the precise moment to call out her prices with confidence. She must be graceful in her movements, persuasive in her speech, and constantly alert to the subtle intentions of her neighbors. Market disputes rarely erupt into loud arguments. More often, they are a language of their own. A quick, knowing glance, a fleeting frown of disapproval, a quiet but firm claim over a patch of shade in the sun. The stakes are incredibly high. A few too many missteps, a loss of face, and she risks losing her reputation and with it, her entire livelihood. But just as competition is a constant, so too is the necessity of cooperation. During festivals, community celebrations, or on days when the trading is exceptionally busy, the market transforms. You'll see women pooling their resources, lending a hand to carry heavy baskets of fruit, and sharing advice on pricing to ensure everyone benefits from the surge in customers. These brief, powerful moments of unity are a reminder that survival here depends not just on individual cunning, but on a network of trust and mutual support. In these moments, the community reinforces its bonds, proving that together they are stronger than the sum of their parts. Adding another layer of complexity to this already intricate world are the obligations of family. Many of these remarkable women are mothers, sisters, and wives, skillfully balancing their domestic duties with their commercial responsibilities. It's not uncommon to see children playing near their mother's stalls, absorbing the art of the trade through observation, their small hands mimicking the gestures of weighing goods or counting coins. Meanwhile, older relatives might manage the household, ensuring that the rhythm of life at home continues uninterrupted. Every single transaction, every negotiation carries the weight of familial expectation. A market woman's success isn't just measured in the coins she brings home, but in the food she provides for her family and the honor she brings to her household. Social hierarchies are woven as tightly into the market's fabric as the colorful patterns on the textiles for sale. There is a deep, unspoken respect for experience and tradition. Elders act as guides for newcomers, passing down generations of knowledge. Seasoned traders mentor apprentices, teaching them not just how to sell, but how to conduct themselves with dignity. Respected sellers, those who have earned a reputation for fairness and wisdom, wield a quiet but powerful authority. Those who disregard these unwritten rules, who fail to adhere to local customs, may find themselves ostracized. Their goods might be ignored, their voices unheard in the market's chorus. In this world, social grace, patience, and a deep understanding of tradition are just as valuable as the freshest spices or the sturdiest clay pots. This is how order is maintained, not through force, but through shared values and mutual respect. The market is also a vibrant hub of storytelling, a living library of oral history. As they work, women exchange news carried by traders from distant villages. They share exciting tales of adventurous merchants who braved long journeys, and they whisper cautionary warnings about competitors. Some stories serve as lessons, recounting the fates of those who became too greedy, fell into debt, or were betrayed by supposed allies. Other stories are celebratory, praising a particularly clever deal, a communal success, or an unexpected act of generosity. These narratives do more than just pass the time. They carry the memory and wisdom of the community, teaching lessons that extend far beyond the bustling marketplace and into the very heart of what it means to be part of this coastal society. Of course, risk is a constant companion. The simmering rivalries can sometimes flare into open disputes, drawing in buyers or other traders who must then choose a side. A misjudged insult, a perceived slight, or the simple act of encroaching on another's designated space can spark a tension that must be quickly diffused or carefully managed to avoid loss for everyone involved. The ability to read moods, to act with discretion and diplomacy, is a survival skill as vital as the physical strength needed to carry heavy baskets under the hot sun. It's a testament to their emotional intelligence and resilience. Even as the day stretches into the long, hot afternoon, the pressure never relents. The women must pace themselves, alternating between displays of strength and charm, endurance and persuasion. The long hours in the heat, the intoxicating mix of spices in the air, the fine dust from the clay pots, and the constant murmur of countless transactions create a rhythm that is both exhausting and exhilarating. The market women move with the grace of dancers in an intricate, unchoreographed ballet. Their poise and skill have been honed by years of repetition, keen observation, and unwavering resilience. By the time the sun begins to set, casting long shadows across the emptying stalls, the day's dynamics have subtly shifted. Alliances may have been tested and reformed. Rivalries may simmer just beneath polite smiles. And every woman prepares for the coming night with careful thought for the day ahead. Some will quietly count their coins, a tangible measure of their hard work. Others will tally promises of future deals, investments in tomorrow. And many will whisper lessons to their daughters, passing on the timeless wisdom of how to navigate the delicate balance between competition and kinship, rivalry and community. The day may be over, but its lessons linger, etched into memory and carried on the evening breeze, waiting to guide the steps of those who will rise with the next sun. The sun rises gently over the Swahili coast, spilling gold across the rooftops and alleyways where the market women live. The world above ground awakens, not to the clamor of the market, but to a different rhythm of life that exists beyond the stalls. While the market may be a battlefield of commerce, the village is a haven of connection, domestic labor, and the subtle negotiations of survival. It's here, in these quiet spaces, that the women who brave the market forge communities, raise families, and sustain traditions passed down through generations. For so many of these women, their labor is divided, split between public trade and private care. Long before the first light touches the horizon, children begin to stir in their sleep. The scent of cooking fires mingles with the salty ocean breeze, a familiar morning perfume. Mothers are already up, their movements swift and practiced as they prepare porridge, clean the floors, and set the household in order before they must step out into the demanding world of the market. Older siblings take on their own roles, assisting in tending to the younger ones. Carrying water from the wells or the nearby shoreline, their eyes are watchful, scanning the paths for the arrival of traders or the first potential buyers of the day. Let's pause here for a moment. Listen. The fire crackles softly. Imagine resting beneath the stars, listening to the early murmur of a community in motion. This quiet yet profound rhythm of life above ground. Village life is deeply interwoven with networks of care and reciprocity. It's a tapestry where every thread matters. Neighbors lend hands to fetch water, their laughter echoing as they balance clay pots. They help carry heavy bundles of firewood or mend torn garments. Every single action is threaded with social expectation and practical necessity. A market woman might spend hours negotiating deals under the piercing sun. But the success of her day truly depends on the support she receives from those around her. It's the mothers who watch her children, the aunts who lend advice on managing the household, the sisters who bring fresh baskets to replenish her stall when supplies run low. These daily routines are punctuated with moments of quiet reflection and ritual. You'll see women offering small, heartfelt prayers at their doorsteps. They pour water to honor ancestors, a simple gesture filled with deep meaning. They whisper blessings to their children as they leave for school or to play in the village lanes. These practices, so subtle and often invisible to an outsider's eye, form the invisible scaffolding that holds up the entire community, that preserves its memory. They are acts of continuity in a life where the pressures of trade and survival are absolutely relentless. The emotional labor of absence is another constant weight these women carry. Many leave before dawn, their figures disappearing into the pre-dawn mist, and only return as the sun dips low, their faces glistening with sweat and their hands calloused from the day's work. Their children wait, learning patience and responsibility far beyond their years, while the elders maintain the steady, comforting rhythm of the household. A letter, a small token, or a simple gift might be left behind to remind loved ones of care and presence. Quiet negotiation between the distance they must travel and the intimacy they cherish. Yet, life above ground is also the stage for celebration. It's not all toil and sacrifice. The calendar is punctuated by festivals, weddings, and communal meals that offer respite and reaffirm those crucial social bonds. Even when they are weary from their labor, the market women participate fully. They join in the dances, their voices rising in song, and share in the abundance of food. They don ceremonial dress, vibrant fabrics like kanga, and ornaments crafted right there in the village or purchased with pride at the market. These celebrations are a powerful reminder to everyone that life is both work and art, both struggle and joy. The domestic spaces, the homes themselves, are also workshops. While the market is where the finished wares are displayed, the home is where the craft is born and refined. Here, pottery is carefully painted with intricate designs. Beads are threaded onto strings to create beautiful jewelry, and spices are sorted and packed, ready for sale. Young girls learn by watching, their small hands copying the movements of their mothers and grandmothers. slowly mastering the techniques that will one day carry them into the market themselves. Knowledge flows quietly, a gentle current across generations, as women embody both teacher and student, passing on a legacy of skill and resilience. The rhythms of day and night mark the passage of life here. As evening falls, smoke curls from cooking fires, a sign that the day is winding down. Animals settle into their pens, and the sweet sound of mothers calling their children home fills the air. Conversations gather around the fire, recounting the day's small victories, the challenges met, and the lessons learned in the bustling market. Softly, songs rise into the cooling air, blending memories of the past with hopes for the morrow. Each voice, young and old, contributes to the beautiful mosaic of village life living, breathing record of strategy, care, and unwavering resilience. Let's pause once more. The fire crackles softly as we rest beneath the stars. Life above ground, so filled with domestic labor, with nurturing, and with quiet vigilance, sit perfectly mirrors the struggles of the market. The women's work is continuous, their attention stretched thin across households and commerce alike. Yet, it is in these small, steady, seemingly ordinary acts that the community holds together. It's how the rhythm of Swahili coastal life persists, enduring all the pressures of trade, rivalry, and social expectation. As the night deepens, the village grows quiet. The vibrant sounds of the day give way to a profound peace. Only the occasional call of an owl from a nearby baobab tree, the distant, soothing murmur of the sea, or the soft shuffle of a night patrol reminds anyone still awake that life continues, steady and unbroken. Tomorrow, the market will awaken once more with all its energy and noise. But for now, in this moment, the village breathes in gentle balance, and the women who sustain it, the very heart of this community, finally rest. Momentarily freed from the sun's relentless heat and the endless demands of commerce, the Indian Ocean winds carried far more than just ships and spices. They carried the stories of women whose footsteps echoed through sandy streets and bustling market squares. Long before dawn painted its pale, rosy light across the Swahili coast, the market women were already awake. You could find them bending over baskets of fish, still glistening and wet from the morning tide, or carefully measuring millet in large, hollowed-out calabash. Others would be cutting precise lengths of cloth, vibrant with the deep hues of indigo and red, ready for the day's trade. These women weren't just simple sellers of goods. They were the very anchors of an economy that thrived on countless small exchanges, repeated day after day. Their work wove the lives of entire communities together, creating a strong, resilient social fabric, while grand merchants in their tall dhows sailed across vast seas, carrying precious ivory and delicate porcelain. It was the women in the winding alleys and town squares who kept households fed, clothed and connected to the pulse of local trade. Imagine the scene: a busy Swahili coastal market at dawn. Women are artfully arranging their wares on woven mats baskets overflowing with fish, mounds of millet, and stacks of colorful cloth. In the background, the sea stretches out to the horizon, the source of so much of this life and commerce. This was the daily reality in the sandy courtyards of Kilwa, the shaded avenues of Zanzibar, and the bustling harbour streets of Mombasa. Here, women formed the absolute spine of the food supply chain. A ship captain, returning from a long voyage to the Red Sea, might boast about the fine Persian ceramics or luxurious Indian cotton he'd acquired. But when he craved a warm, comforting stew of fish and rice, or needed to restock his vessel with dried mango and salted meat for the next leg of his journey, who did he turn to? He turned to the women who managed those supplies. They didn't just sell, they were masters of logistics. They calculated the seasons, monitored the weather, and instinctively understood market demand. They knew precisely which villages inland had a surplus of grain after a good harvest, which fishing boats consistently returned with the fattest catch, and which families could be trusted to pay on credit until the next ship arrived with a fresh supply of silver coins. Their power lay in their intimate grasp of scale. They operated at the level of households and communities, where every single coin mattered, and where necessity and immediacy drove every transaction. Think about the spices that made this trade: famous clove, cardamom, cinnamon. While they were celebrated across distant empires, they often reached local kitchens first through a woman's basket, not a merchant's warehouse. In this way, these women formed the vital arteries that connected the grand, epic stories of oceanic exchange to the quiet, humble tables where families gathered for their evening meals. The global became local through their hands. Picture a sunlit market square. Women in bright, patterned kanga cloths are haggling over baskets of spices and grains. Their voices are animated, their hands gesturing emphatically as they negotiate. This was the rhythm of the market. By mid-morning, the square would be filled with a symphony of chatter as women called out their prices, praising the freshness of their fish or drawing attention to the fine craftsmanship of their woven mats, while men often negotiated large-scale deals involving entire caravans or dhows. Women excelled in the sharp, personal give-and-take of direct exchange. They knew their customers by name, by their family history, and by the intricate web of debts and favors owed. Their ledgers sometimes written down, but more often committed to a formidable memory, recorded each transaction as a single thread in a broader net of social and economic obligation. Over time, some of these women grew quite prosperous. Their stalls became larger, their voices carried more weight in community disputes, and their influence expanded. Others chose to specialize, building a reputation for a particular product. One woman might be known for the richest, most flavorful palm oil, another for the most fragrant dried cloves, a third for selling milk from goats that was said to have healing properties. This diversity was the key to the community's resilience. The fortunes of long-distance traders could rise and fall dramatically with the shifting monsoons, the outbreak of wars, or the threat of piracy. But the steady, reliable hum of the women's markets provided a crucial sense of continuity and stability, ensuring life went on regardless of the chaos on the high seas. The scale of their influence widened even further during festivals and feasts. A wedding, for instance, demanded an abundance of fine fabrics, exotic perfumes, and special foods. Funerals required vast quantities of rice, meat, and oil, far beyond what a single household would normally need. In these moments, the women traders rose to the occasion. They would pool their resources, collaborate to set fair prices, and work together to ensure that supplies reached those in need. In doing so, they demonstrated not only their economic strength, but also a powerful, unspoken solidarity that often stood in stark contrast to the fierce rivalries that defined the world of the larger male merchants. Their cooperation was the glue that held the community together during its most important moments. We should also give special mention to their role in the cloth trade. While bolts of dazzling Indian cotton were highly prized, it was often the local women who cut, dyed, and resold this cloth, transforming it into something new. They shaped both fashion and identity. A particular pattern worn at the market one day could spark a new trend across the entire town, spreading by word of mouth as quickly as sailors carried news from one port to another. In this sense, women's trade was not just economic. It was profoundly cultural. It shaped what people saw, what they valued, and what they chose to imitate in their daily lives. As the afternoon sea breeze began to move inland and the sun climbed higher in the sky, the women's markets would slowly wind down. Goods that remained unsold were carefully stored away for the next day. Debts were noted, and a final round of gossip was exchanged before the heavy baskets were lifted and carried back home. Yet, even after the market fell silent, their influence lingered. It was felt in the private sphere of kitchens and households, where their trade decisions determined what meals were shared, what stories were told around the fire, and what children remembered of times of abundance or periods of hunger. The immense economic power of these market women was not always acknowledged in the official histories, written by kings or in the logs kept by ship captains. But for everyone who actually lived along the Swahili coast, their importance was undeniable and self-evident. Without them, the grandeur of the Indian Ocean trade would have had no roots, no steady heartbeat in the villages and towns it claimed to enrich. They were the foundation upon which so much else was built. Welcome back to our journey along the Swahili coast. In our last episode, we explored the economic foundations of these vibrant port cities. Today, we're stepping away from the ledgers and cargo manifests to explore a different kind of power. One that thrived not in stone palaces, but under the thatched roofs of the marketplace. If the market stalls of the Swahili coast were places of trade, they were equally arenas of influence. Beneath the shade of awnings, where the air smelled of smoked fish and fresh limes, women did more than just sell. They shaped the very rhythms of society, carried stories across families, and often decided what reputations would thrive or wither under the sun. A market woman's voice could carry further than a sailor's horn, not because it was loud, but because it was trusted. She was the custodian of gossip. But this wasn't just idle chatter, it was the pulse of the community vital information disguised as stories. Warnings carried in laughter and subtle judgments cloaked in riddles. When a woman repeated a tale of a merchant's unpaid debt or a young man's late-night mischief, she wasn't just spreading news. She was setting the boundaries for what was acceptable and what was not. In this way, the women of the market became the unofficial arbiters of social norms. They decided who could be trusted, who should be avoided, and whose fortunes might be encouraged. Their collective wisdom was a social currency more valuable than any coin. Cultural currents passed through these markets as naturally as spices and currency. Sailors from Gujarat, Yemen, and Somalia arrived at the ports, bringing not only goods, but also new songs, unfamiliar fabrics, and stories from distant lands. The men might have met them first in the harbor, but it was the women in the markets who absorbed, interpreted, and adapted these new influences for the community. A melody hummed by a sailor from a faraway land could become a lullaby sung by mothers to their children. A style of cloth worn by a visitor might be reshaped into a local kanga, dyed with traditional Swahili motifs and layered with meaning through proverbs woven along its hem. These women were not just consumers. They were cultural curators, deciding which foreign elements would enrich their society and which would be cast aside. Beyond their economic roles, women carried the immense responsibility of storytelling. Not in the grand, epic sense of official court historians, but in the daily narrations that wove the very fabric of identity. The markets were their stages, where reputations were constantly tested and reinforced. A young bride might first be judged, not in her husband's home, but by how she navigated the market. Did she bargain wisely? Did she greet the elders with the proper respect? Did she carry herself with the quiet authority expected of her new role? Every interaction was a performance, and the audience was a jury of her peers. These bustling spaces also functioned as informal classrooms. Younger women learned the delicate craft of negotiation by standing beside their mothers and aunts. They watched how prices were skillfully pushed up or gently pulled down, how insults were deflected with a sharp wit and a smile, and how patient persistence often mattered more than the size of one's purse. In this way, markets became schools of social etiquette, teaching invaluable lessons that extended far beyond the transaction itself into marriages, family disputes, and even community leadership. The interactions between these women and the male traders revealed another dimension of their influence. Male merchants often arrived with wealth, large-scale operations, and a certain prestige. But their success, their very survival in the local economy, required the approval of the market women. A man could anchor his dhow, its hull filled with treasures from afar, but if the women traders did not buy, resell, or recommend his goods, his fortune would literally rot in the sun. This dynamic gave women a subtle but immense power over what succeeded in the local markets. They were cultural filters. They had the final say on which foreign items would be woven into the tapestry of Swahili society and which would simply fade away, forgotten. The daily life of the market was a constant dance between cooperation and competition. Men might attempt to undercut prices or dominate certain trades, but the women, with their deeply rooted networks and sense of solidarity, often counterbalanced these moves. A group of women might collectively agree to raise or lower the price of grain to stabilize the market, resisting the attempts of a single wealthy merchant to control it. In doing so, they weren't just protecting their economic interests. They were reinforcing their cultural role as guardians of fairness and community balance. This cultural influence was most visible in how women used trade to support rituals and ceremonies. Weddings, for example, required fabrics dyed in specific, symbolic colors, exotic perfumes for the bride, and foods that represented fertility and abundance. Women controlled the supply of these essential goods, and in doing so, they had the final say on how traditions were expressed and performed. Festivals, religious observances, and seasonal harvest celebrations were all infused with goods that had first been shaped by their hands and judgments. They were not passive providers. They were active interpreters of culture, ensuring that sacred and social practices remained vibrant and deeply connected to daily life. In the quieter corners of the market, women also influenced health and healing. Herbal remedies were sold right alongside food. Knowledge of which root soothed a fever or which leaf could ease the pains of childbirth traveled through these powerful women's networks. These remedies weren't written in books. They were remembered in voices, tested in households, and passed down in whispers from elder to apprentice. This seamless blend of economic activity and healing practices further cemented women's cultural importance, making them indispensable to the community's well-being. Even in their brief interactions with sailors and foreign visitors, these women became powerful cultural ambassadors. They might not have boarded the ships or signed the trade treaties, but their speech, their dress, and their mannerisms carried the very essence of Swahili society to the outside world. A sailor who lingered at a stall to buy spices would carry home impressions of the coast, not from the courts of sultans, but from the easy laughter or the sharp wit of a market woman. And so, we see the market was never merely a place of buying and selling. It was a living theatre of society. Women's voices directed its music, their decisions shaped its values, and their daily presence ensured that culture remained inseparable from commerce. When the sun began to set and the stalls were packed away for the night, the echo of those voices remained, traveling back into every home. Families sat around meals flavored by market spices, wrapped in fabrics chosen by women's discerning eyes, and healed by herbs they provided. The social influence lingered in the unspoken rules of respect, generosity, and caution that these women upheld through every story, every price, and every single exchange. Their legacy wasn't carved in stone. It was lived, breathed, and passed on every single day. The Swahili markets were never isolated. Each stall of grain, each basket of dried fish, each measure of cloves and pepper was a thread in a much larger tapestry, one that stretched far beyond the sandy lanes of coastal towns. To sit in the market was, in a way, to sit at the edge of an ocean-sized conversation, a conversation carried by ships, winds, and tides. And women, though often rooted in their stalls, knew exactly how to listen to that conversation and weave it into their daily exchanges. The Indian Ocean wasn't some distant horizon, it was a neighbor. Its tides marked the rhythm of trade. When the monsoon winds blew from the east, dhows sailed in from Gujarat and Arabia. When the winds reversed, they returned, carrying Swahili goods outward. Within this ebb and flow, women were the ones who kept the chain unbroken, connecting what arrived on the docks to what was finally served in a household meal or offered in a ritual. They managed the details, the weight of rice, the quality of cloth, the freshness of fish. It was in these seemingly small details that the grand spectacle of global trade was grounded. Zanzibar, Kilwa, Mombasa, Lamu, each coastal town was a bead strung along this oceanic necklace of trade. Goods didn't just move in faceless bulk, they moved through hands, and many of those hands belonged to women. A sack of cloves harvested inland might first pass to a woman in Zanzibar, who would measure it into smaller, more manageable bundles to sell. A length of Indian cotton cloth might be cut, resewn, and dyed by Swahili women before being resold in another form entirely. Their ability to reshape and repackage goods gave them a quiet, yet profound, influence over which items became desirable and which faded into obscurity. They were the original tastemakers, the curators of the coast. The matter of currency was just as fluid as the goods themselves. Barter was still common, exchanging fish for millet, or cloth for coconuts, but women also grew adept at handling coins, beads, and cowrie shells. These weren't simple tokens. Each carried a story of distance. A cowrie shell might have journeyed all the way from the Maldives. A silver coin might have passed through the hands of a Yemeni trader. To a market woman, these weren't just symbols of value, but tangible evidence of the ocean's far reach. Right there in her own stall. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, letting the vastness of the sea breathe into the night. Trade also brought encounters fleeting, yet impactful. Sailors and merchants from distant lands depended on local women to mediate the exchange of their goods. A Yemeni trader might offer a block of fragrant incense, but it was the women who decided whether its unique scent would find a place in Swahili households and rituals. A Gujarati cloth might arrive brightly patterned, but only after women tested its durability in washing and dyeing would it be fully accepted into the local culture. In this way, women became the unofficial cultural gatekeepers, translating foreign offerings into local traditions, ensuring that new items didn't just arrive, but belonged. There was also an incredible resilience in their networks. When crops failed inland, or when conflict disrupted the arrival of caravans, these women adapted. They leaned into their connections, shifting to selling what could be fished from the sea, gathered from the shore, or traded from nearby towns. These adjustments weren't random. They were coordinated, often through gossip and alliances that stretched across towns. What one woman learned in Malindi could ripple through her network to her cousin in Lamu. And soon, an entire chain of adjustments would keep the coastal economy alive. Their whispers were the lifeblood of commerce. The spiritual and social dimensions of trade were never far away either. Goods carried blessings and dangers, and women knew how to navigate both. Before selling a particularly valuable basket of cloves or a fine bundle of cloth, a woman might whisper a quiet prayer or sprinkle a little water as an offering. The markets were porous spaces where the sacred and the commercial mingled freely, and it was women's hands that ensured both realms remained in balance. They understood that trade wasn't just about profit. It was about maintaining harmony. Beyond the ports of East Africa, the presence of women's influence was felt in subtle, yet significant, ways. When a sailor carried Swahili spices back to Oman, he also carried stories of the laughter and the sharp bargaining of the women who sold them. When a bale of cloth dyed with Swahili motifs reached an inland caravan, it bore the unseen decision of a woman who had chosen that specific pattern. So, even if the women themselves did not travel far by sea, their fingerprints stretched across the Indian Ocean, shaping impressions and tastes in distant lands. Let's pause again here. The tide laps gently against the shore, and in the distance, the sails of dhows lean toward the horizon like silent prayers. This was the quiet genius of the Swahili market women, their ability to make global trade intimate. They never treated goods as faceless commodities. Each measure of rice was a portion of a future meal. Each colorful bead was a symbol to be worn and cherished. Each spice carried a fragrance that could bless a home or seduce a guest. By always seeing the human side of trade, they grounded an entire, sprawling economic network in the realities of daily life. And so, while men sailed the oceans, it was often women who anchored society. Their trade networks were woven less with sails and more with stories, less with anchors and more with alliances. They ensured that the Indian Ocean was not just a highway for goods, but a living web that reached directly into kitchens, ceremonies, and even the lullabies sung to children. As night deepened and the voices of the markets faded, the ocean continued to breathe in and out, carrying its endless cargo of goods and people. And through it all, the presence of Swahili market women remained steady, often unseen by history's grand narratives of kings and sailors, yet absolutely indispensable to the survival of both. Sound of a crackling fire and distant, gentle night sounds welcome back. As the fire crackles and the stars watch over us, let's journey back in time to the Swahili coast, just before the sun begins its climb. In the cool, deep hush before sunrise, when the sky is still painted in shades of indigo, a sound breaks the silence, the call of the muezzin. In the markets of Zanzibar and along the coast, Swahili women are already awake. But their first task isn't always arranging their goods or fetching water. No, it begins with something far more profound. It begins with whispered blessings, with tracing lines of protection that will carry them through the long, uncertain day ahead. Because in a market filled with rivalry, envy, and the ever-shifting winds of fortune, success depends on more than just clever bargaining. It depends on unseen forces that can be guided, persuaded, or shielded against. Imagine a woman kneeling before her empty stall. She holds a small bowl of water, dips her fingers, and scatters droplets across the dusty ground while murmuring, "Bismillah, in the name of God." To her, this isn't mere superstition, it's assurance. She is opening her trade not just to customers, but to divine favor. Look around, and you'll see others tying small, mysterious cloth bundles to the poles of their stalls. Each one conceals a secret world of charms, dried herbs, seashells, or verses from the Quran meticulously written on folded paper. These are powerful amulets designed to ward off the evil eye, to protect her precious wares from theft, and to ensure that money flows in as steadily as the ocean tides. The rituals themselves vary from woman to woman, from market to market, but the intention is always the same: to create a sacred boundary, a protective circle around one's livelihood. It's a practice woven into the fabric of coastal life. Just as fishermen recite prayers before setting their boats out on the unpredictable sea, these women seek blessings before opening their baskets of rice, laying out their glistening fish, or unfolding brilliant bolts of cloth. Their work, though deeply earthly and centered on survival, is inextricably tied to the divine. In their eyes, a stall without a blessing is like a boat without an anchor adrift and vulnerable in the turbulent currents of trade. These protective spells are also subtle, yet powerful, expressions of agency. A woman might hang a gourd painted with ancient symbols above her stall, a silent declaration of her protected space. Another might sprinkle a fine, fragrant dust of crushed herbs into the cracks of her mat before spreading out her wares, sealing her territory from negative energy. Some carry tiny beads or stones tied at their wrists, each one believed to absorb any ill will or jealousy directed at them by their rivals. These gestures, though quiet and often unnoticed, cultivate a deep sense of resilience. They send a clear message to the watching world: I am shielded. My work is not alone. Let's pause here for a moment. Close your eyes. Listen to the fire crackle. Can you imagine it? The low, rhythmic murmur of women's prayers mixing with the early morning rustle of baskets being set down on the cool, dusty earth, all under a canopy of stars. Islamic blessings play a profound and central role in shaping these daily rituals. The phrase, Inshallah, if God wills, it is a constant, grounding refrain you hear in every negotiation, every exchange. It's a reminder of a greater power guiding the day's fortunes. Women often recite du'as or supplications over their goods. They pray for honest buyers, for their fish to remain fresh under the growing heat, for their spices to carry their fragrance deep into the homes they will enter. A whispered blessing over a simple measure of rice might seem invisible, an insignificant gesture, but for the seller it can mean the difference between profit and loss, between a day of fortune and one of calamity. Yet, woven alongside these powerful Quranic prayers, you can find echoes of even older practices, ancestral traditions that predate Islam's arrival on the coast. Some women carry beautifully carved wooden amulets, heirlooms passed down through generations, said to hold the protective spirit of their ancestors. Others sing quiet, haunting incantations as they set down their baskets, the words too ancient to trace, but believed to root them in the strength and wisdom of their foremothers. In these sacred moments, different faiths and beliefs mingle without contradiction. Islam provides the structure and the framework, but ancestral memory gives these rituals their unique texture, their soul. These rituals are not only defensive, they are also meant to actively invite prosperity. It's a beautiful dance between protection and attraction. Some women sprinkle saffron-colored water on their stalls, its vibrant hue intended to catch the eye and attract generous customers. Others might trace circles in the dust with their toes before the first transaction of the day, symbolically opening a channel for the flow of trade. A seller of cloth might lovingly rub a new shimmering bolt with fragrant oil while murmuring blessings, praying that its sheen will captivate the eyes of many buyers. These practices, at once deeply spiritual and intensely practical, infuse the market with a sense of theatre of magic. Every exchange becomes more than a simple sale. It becomes an enactment of the delicate balance between the seen and the unseen worlds. Let's pause here once more. The night around us is still. Imagine the faint, warm glow of oil lamps flickering over these carefully placed charms and amulets, their shadows dancing quietly against the woven mats, holding secrets of generations. And these women did not practice their rituals in isolation. This sacred knowledge was a shared inheritance. They passed it down to their daughters, to their nieces, to young apprentices. They taught them the correct way to fold a protective charm, the right words to whisper at the break of dawn, the specific herbs to crush into a powder that would keep envy at bay. In this way, these blessings and protective spells were not just individual shields. They were the very threads that bound generations of market women together. Each ritual was both an act of survival and an act of legacy. And so, as the sun rises higher, the markets slowly awaken and fill with a symphony of noise the clatter of coins, the vibrant cries of sellers advertising their goods, the chorus of bargaining voices. But beneath it all, if you listen closely, you can still feel it. The quieter, more powerful hum of prayer and ritual. Every purchase, every measure of millet, every drop of perfume is underpinned by these ancient blessings that seek to keep trade flowing and spirits calm. These rituals transformed the market from a mere site of commerce into a living, breathing space where faith, tradition, and the daily human struggle for a better life are beautifully and powerfully intertwined. While the markets buzzed with life, they were also guided by an invisible map of rules, an ancient code of what must not be done, spoken, or even gestured. These were the taboos and superstitions that formed the very architecture of Swahili markets, passed from elders to youth, whispered like warnings beneath the clamor of bargaining voices. One of the most important rules warned against starting the day with a quarrel. If your first transaction was filled with anger, it was believed your entire day's fortune would turn sour. A woman might refuse a sale if the first customer haggled too harshly, choosing to wait for a kinder exchange, even if it meant losing a coin. To do otherwise risked angering not just her neighbors but unseen forces. A morning argument was like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over all her wares for the rest of the day. It simply wasn't worth the risk. Another powerful belief, whispered through the stalls, was the fear of envy. Envy, people said, could rot goods right in their baskets, dry up the flow of customers, or draw theft like a moth to a flame. To guard against this, women avoided boasting about good sales. They might cover their best produce with a cloth, shielding it from jealous eyes. Some believed that even praising your own fish too loudly could cause them to spoil before noon. In this world, silence and modesty were not signs of weakness. They were a form of protective armor, a way to keep misfortune at bay. The market also had strict rules about touch. It was considered very bad luck for certain people to handle a woman's wares before they were sold. Children, for example, were often scolded if their curious hands touched goods without any intention to buy. Their careless fingers were thought to carry wandering spirits that could taint the items. Strangers were also watched carefully, as a touch with ill intent could invite theft or even sickness. A woman would rather wave a potential buyer away than allow careless hands to linger on her pottery or cloth. Let's just pause here for a moment. Imagine the scene. The fire crackles softly, and we can almost hear the echoes of those market voices layered with caution. Every gesture, every glance, is weighted with meaning, a silent conversation with a world just beyond our sight. Certain days of the week were also wrapped in superstition. Markets that opened on Fridays were seen as especially blessed, aligned with communal prayer and divine favor. But opening a stall during specific moon cycles, particularly a waning moon, was thought to bring poor sales. It was as if the moon's fading light drained the market of its energy and its customers. Women watched the skies as closely as they watched their purses, believing the heavens directly mirrored their fortunes here on earth. Words themselves held immense power in the Swahili imagination, and uttering the wrong phrase in the market could invite disaster. Many sellers avoided saying the word empty aloud, fearing it would magically empty their baskets. Instead, they used softer, more hopeful metaphors, like the pot is resting or the mat is waiting. It was a clever way to trick misfortune into passing them by, using language as a shield against bad luck. The fear of theft was, of course, ever present. But beyond keeping a watchful eye on their stalls, women relied on superstitions for protection. Some would place fiery chili peppers at the corners of their tables, believing the intense heat would sting the hands of any thief who dared to steal. Others buried small charms under their mats, said to freeze a thief's hands in place or cause him to be caught by the crowd before he could escape. Stories spread through the market tales of men struck dumb or even paralyzed after trying to snatch goods from a stall protected by powerful spells. Whether these stories were completely true didn't matter. They gave real weight to these hidden defenses, creating an aura of protection that was more powerful than any lock. Let's pause here again. As the stars begin to glimmer above, you can almost feel those invisible barriers drawn by the quiet wisdom of these women. Their stalls and baskets are shielded not just by cloth, but by a quiet, unseen force. But these taboos were about more than just self-defense. They were crucial for maintaining community order. A woman who violated these unspoken rules risked more than just a day of bad luck. She risked her entire reputation. If a seller was accused of selling fish without blessing them first, or of ignoring the guidance of the moon, her neighbors might start to avoid her stall, fearing that her misfortune could be contagious. In the market, a good reputation was as delicate as a clay pot. Superstition acted as both the glue that held the community together and the force that could shatter trust if its rules were broken. These lessons were passed down like oral law from one generation to the next. Grandmothers would solemnly warn their daughters, "Never sweep your stall in the middle of the day, or you'll sweep away your customers. Never mock another woman's goods, because misfortune has a way of shifting its attention to you." These weren't seen as burdens, but as essential tools for survival in a highly competitive world. They were a playbook for navigating the complex social and spiritual landscape of the market. In this way, superstition became both a shield and a scriptan, inherited wisdom that ensured every single gesture in the market carried profound weight. Each taboo was a quiet declaration that trade is about so much more than just goods and coins. It's about the unseen world, the spirits, and the power of words left unspoken. The markets thrived not just because of the spices and textiles they sold, but because of the delicate, invisible web of rituals, blessings, and taboos that gave them a deeper meaning. And so, beneath all the noisy exchanges and vibrant colors, a quieter, more powerful current always flowed. It was the current of fear, hope, and memory, carried in the whispers of superstition. The market was never just a marketplace. It was a living, breathing world, where every clink of a coin, every touch of cloth, and every chili pepper on the ground spoke of powerful forces just beyond human sight. On the Swahili coast, the market was never just a place to buy and sell. It was a grand stage, a living theater where identities were woven, tested, and performed for all to see. When a woman walked into the marketplace, she wasn't just entering an economic arena. She was stepping into a shared space of belonging, where every gesture, every ritual, and every word spoken helped to define her place within the community. To set up a stall was to make a declaration. Here I am part of you, I depend on you, and together we are shaping the rhythm of our town. It was a quiet but incredibly powerful act of citizenship, a claim to being a vital piece of the social puzzle. Belonging began with visibility. You had to be seen. Market women marked their space not just with their mats, baskets, or the shade cloths they hung, but with subtle, meaningful rituals of presence. You might see some sprinkling water mixed with seawater at the corners of their stalls, a beautiful symbol of freshness and life drawn from the ocean that sustained them. Others would burn a small sprig of frankincense, its fragrant smoke curling upwards like a silent flag of identity, announcing their arrival and purifying the space. Through these small but significant gestures, a woman claimed more than just a few square feet of earth for her stall. She claimed her role within the collective body of the market. This wasn't a place you could just dip in and out of. To miss too many days was to risk being forgotten. And in a community where survival depended so heavily on trust and connection, absence could cost you far more than just money. It could cost you your place. Let's pause here for a moment. Imagine the fire crackling softly as we rest beneath the vast, starry sky. Identity in the market wasn't something you owned alone. It was a gift bestowed and reinforced by others. A market woman's reputation was her most valuable asset, and it could hinge on anything: her fairness in trade, her sharp and witty tongue, or her uncanny ability to draw customers in. Praise could spread like the sweet scent of jasmine on the evening breeze. She sells the freshest coconuts. One person would whisper to another, and her business would flourish. But just as quickly, slander could poison the air. Her scales are false, or her fish smell of yesterday's catch. A reputation could be built over years and destroyed in a single afternoon. This constant exchange of information wasn't just idle gossip. It was a social economy, a complex web of communication that tied every woman to her peers. To be known as trustworthy meant survival. It meant customers would seek you out, other traders would support you, and your family would eat well. To be branded as untrustworthy, on the other hand, could mean social death. It could mean isolation, ruin, and being cast out from the very community that gave you life. Beyond the hustle of trade, the marketplace was the very heart of Swahili culture, the place where its pulse beat strongest. It was here that new songs caught fire and spread through the town, where the latest poetry from distant cities like Kilwa or Zanzibar was recited to an eager audience. It was where young men and women stole shy glances at each other, glances that could blossom into formal marriage negotiations between families. The market was also a court of fashion, when kangas with new, vibrant designs arrived from across the ocean. Their printed proverbs would spark lively conversations and debates among the women, each phrase a small piece of wisdom or a witty commentary on life. The market was the community's sensory gateway to the wider world. It was here that new foods from across the vast Indian Ocean cloves from Zanzibar, rice from Madagascar, colorful beads from India were first touched, smelled, and tasted by the townspeople. To handle these goods was to touch the world, to feel a tangible connection to a vast, interconnected web of trade and culture. It was a constant reminder of one's place within a global identity, a Swahili identity shaped by the sea. Let's pause here again. Feel the warmth of the fire, listen to its gentle crackle, and gaze up at the stars. The market was also a mirror of the community's social structure, a clear reflection of its hierarchy. The senior women, those who had held their stalls for decades, sat like anchors at the center of the square, Their very presence was a symbol of stability and continuity, a reminder of the traditions that held the community together. Younger women, new to the trade, often started on the fringes, testing their luck with smaller trades, learning the rhythms of the market until they proved themselves worthy of a more permanent, central place. But even this hierarchy was fluid, softened by rituals of respect and mutual support. A young trader, hoping to gain favor and wisdom, might bring a small gift of fresh fruit to an elder, a simple gesture acknowledging her experience and guidance. In return, that elder might shield the younger woman from harmful gossip or offer her valuable tips about the ebb and flow of customers throughout the day. Belonging, then, was never just about selling your wares. It was about weaving yourself into the layered fabric of relationships, obligations, and gestures that defined the community. It was about knowing who to trust, who to respect, and how to contribute to the collective well-being. At its deepest level, the market was a perfect reflection of the Swahili worldview itself. It was a space where not just goods were exchanged, but meanings, reputations, and relationships. A woman could assert her independence through her successful stall, but at the same time, she affirmed her deep connection to others through ritual, respect, and the simple act of showing up, day after day. Her presence in the market was a powerful statement. It said, "I belong to this town, to this coast, to this shared life." Her market stall was her voice, her reputation was her currency, and her daily rituals were her signature. And so, the Swahili market was so much more than a hub of trade. It was the living, breathing heartbeat of community identity fierce in its competition, fragile in its dependencies, and enduring in its spirit, all at once. While the marketplace was the beating heart of the Swahili coast, buzzing with the daily exchange of goods and greetings, behind this vibrant scene stood powerful families whose influence reached far beyond the market's stalls. These were the merchant dynasties, the elite households whose names commanded respect in town councils, whose magnificent stone houses faced the ocean with an air of confidence, and whose ships traversed the vast Indian Ocean. For these families, trade wasn't just a means of survival, it was a legacy. It was a centuries-long inheritance, passed down from mother to daughter and father to son, strengthened through rituals of power and the meticulous preservation of their immense wealth. Imagine a grand Swahili stone house, its walls built from coral, adorned with intricately carved wooden doors. A rooftop terrace offers a breathtaking view of the sea. This was the world of the families who ruled trade, while countless men and women worked tirelessly under the hot sun, selling fish, coconuts, or locally woven cloth. These elite families controlled the lucrative upper echelons of commerce. They invested in entire fleets of ships, owned vast warehouses, and held the keys to the precious spices, ivory, and gold that flowed through the coastal ports. Their family names became synonymous with prosperity and power. These were not faceless merchants. They were living dynasties. A market woman selling her goods from dawn to dusk would know the stories of the families who owned the ships that brought her rice, or whose warehouses stored the colorful beads she sold. Their power was visible everywhere, not just in the flow of goods, but in the very fabric of their lives. They lived in imposing stone mansions, a stark contrast to the humble mud huts of the common folk. They financed the construction of elaborate mosques and adorned themselves in fine imported silks, while others wore simple, coarse cotton. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Now, step inside one of these wealthy Swahili homes. The floors are covered with rich Persian rugs, and the soft glow of brass lamps illuminates the room. Women dressed in beautiful silk garments are preparing a meal of fragrant rice and spices. This was the world where luxury was a language. Wealth wasn't just counted in silver and gold coins. It was measured in the luxury goods that signaled status and sophistication. Storerooms were filled with perfumes from Arabia, delicate porcelain from China, and exquisite textiles from India. To serve a meal in a Chinese porcelain bowl or to wear silk embroidered with patterns from a distant land was a powerful statement. It showcased one's connection to the wider world and asserted one's superiority within local society. Inheritance was the key to ensuring this wealth endured through generations. Daughters were married into families of equal or greater standing, their dowries often shifting the balance of fortunes. Sons were trained from a young age to manage caravans, master the art of negotiation, and command trading ships. Yet, women played crucial roles in this system. A wealthy wife's dowry could be a game changer for a family's finances, and her skill in managing household resources was often what preserved their wealth during lean years. These luxuries were far more than simple indulgences. They were strategic tools of power. They spoke of powerful connections that stretched far beyond the horizon, reinforcing the image that these families were not just wealthy, but absolutely indispensable to the very survival of the coast itself. Imagine a family dining in their courtyard at dusk, the scene lit by ornate glowing lanterns, with food served in Chinese porcelain bowls on a beautifully carved wooden table. This was wealth made visible, but with great wealth came great responsibility. Elite families were expected to be patrons of their communities. They financed the construction of mosques, sponsored religious festivals, and provided aid to poorer townspeople during times of famine or hardship. Their influence was built on more than just trade. It required a constant public performance of generosity and piety. Neglecting these duties was a dangerous misstep. Resentment could fester and spread like wildfire. A merchant who hoarded food during a famine risked being cursed in the marketplace, whispered about in the mosques, and immortalized in songs as a greedy miser. On the other hand, a merchant who opened his storerooms and freely distributed rice earned blessings and a reputation for generosity that could protect his family's name for generations to come. So, you see, wealth was a double-edged sword. It elevated families to the highest echelons of Swahili society, but it also bound them to the expectations and needs of their community. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Picture an elderly, wealthy patron in a mosque courtyard at night, the scene illuminated by lanterns. He is personally handing out rice to the townsfolk, a tangible display of his family's commitment to the community. Beyond the grand carved doors and the fragrant imported perfumes lay invisible threads of influence that shaped governance and politics. These prominent families were the trusted advisors to sultans, the chief negotiators with foreign traders, and the gatekeepers who decided who gained access to the most profitable trade routes. To be wealthy was to have a seat, not just in the marketplace, but in the town's ruling council. Decisions on everything from legal disputes and taxes to the construction of defensive walls often depended on the support of these merchant families, whose wealth could finance any proposed solution. In this way, wealth was masterfully transformed into influence, and that influence translated into a form of quasi. The woman selling baskets or spices in the market might have seemed worlds away from these circles of power. Yet her daily life was profoundly shaped by their decisions, their generosity, or their silence. Think of a council of Swahili elders gathered in a shaded courtyard. The wealthy merchant leaders are seated on intricately carved wooden chairs. while the common townsfolk gather respectfully around them, listening to the proceedings. This was the seat of power. The story of these elite merchant families is a powerful reminder that wealth on the Swahili coast was never just about personal success. It was a collective, performative, and deeply intertwined aspect of identity. A family's fortune was not entirely its own, it belonged, in a sense, to the community that watched, judged, expected, and remembered every action. Just as a market woman's reputation could make or break her small business, a merchant family's reputation could elevate or shatter its legacy. Their wealth was a fragile thing, delicately balanced between the privilege of inheritance and the duty of expectation, between luxurious living and public generosity, between wielding control and providing service. In the end, the greatest treasure these families possessed wasn't their ivory, their silks, or their beautiful porcelain bowls. It was their ability to be remembered, as benefactors, as leaders, and as the dedicated guardians of the coastal towns that flourished under their watchful care. As the sun sets over the Swahili coast, the stone mansions glow in the golden light, and the dhows sail slowly across the horizon, carrying with them the echoes of these powerful legacies. On the Swahili coast, trade and kinship were inseparable, woven together like the threads of a fine tapestry. Imagine a wealthy merchant's fortune. If it stood alone, it was as fragile as a single dhow tossed on restless seas. But when families anchored their wealth to others through marriages, political ties, and friendships, their power became steady, held firm by many ropes against the turning tides. The bustling stone towns Kilwa, Mombasa, Zanzibar, Lamu were more than just ports of commerce. They were grand stages for diplomacy, with the most crucial scenes playing out within the walls of family households. Merchant families guarded their daughters' hands and their sons' futures with the same fierce care they guarded their gold coins and coral houses. A single marriage alliance could shift the entire balance of trade, uniting two powerful lineages who, together, could control vast warehouses brimming with ivory, colorful beads, and shimmering imported silks. These unions carried so much more than dowries. They carried entire networks. When a woman entered her husband's household, she didn't arrive empty-handed. She brought with her the reputation, the wealth, and the extensive connections of her own kin. Through her, the trust between two families deepened like a well-tended garden. And through her, whispers of gossip, new alliances, and shared loyalties would spread from the quiet courtyards into the noisy market streets. In towns where merchants often competed fiercely for access to trade caravans and the favor of sea captains, kinship was a powerful antidote to hostility. A bitter rival could, with a carefully arranged marriage, be transformed into a competitor could become a trusted partner in navigating the treacherous, distant routes to Aden, Gujarat, or the Comoros Islands. These intricate ties allowed families to weather the unpredictable storms of shifting global markets, providing a safety net when fortunes faltered. Beyond the bonds of marriage, alliances were also forged in the council houses that governed the towns. Each city-state had its own assembly of elders, imams, and respected leaders who resolved disputes, debated taxation, and mediated conflicts. Merchant families who demonstrated their community spirit by giving gifts of food, sponsoring vibrant festivals, or financing the repairs of mosques found themselves at the very heart of these councils. Their voices carried weight, shaping decisions that determined everything from port dues and caravan rights to who was even allowed to anchor their ships in the coveted harbors. Here, too, women played subtle but vital roles, while men stood in the grand mosques and formal meeting halls. It was often the women who shaped opinions back in the households. They guided conversations over evening meals and whispered clever strategies that their husbands would later carry into the public councils. A wealthy matriarch, respected for her wisdom and influence, could determine whether a debt was forgiven, whether a long-standing feud was finally settled, or whether her family would extend life-saving credit to a struggling neighbor. But these alliances weren't just about politics and profit. They were fundamentally about protection. In bustling port towns, where visiting sailors sometimes stirred up trouble, or where jealousy over a successful trade deal could easily spark tension, a family without allies was dangerously vulnerable. But through their networks of kin, they had defenders at the ready, brothers, cousins, and in-laws prepared to speak on their behalf or rally to their cause if trouble arose. Feasts played a central role in reinforcing these powerful bonds. When a merchant slaughtered goats and served heaping platters of spiced rice for Ramadan or Eid celebrations, he wasn't only honoring his faith, he was staging a public display of his wealth and, more importantly, his generosity to kin and rivals alike. To eat at another family's table was to be drawn into their circle of obligation, creating a debt of loyalty that could be called upon for years to come. The alliances of these merchant families also extended far across the sea. Sons were often sent abroad to study religion in the Hadramaut Valley of Yemen, to apprentice in the bustling bazaars of India, or to negotiate directly with Persian traders. These young men returned, not just with knowledge and foreign contacts, but occasionally with foreign brides. These international marriages created new, invaluable bridges, connecting Swahili families not just to their immediate neighbors, but to powerful networks stretching across the entire Indian Ocean. Imagine a family in Mombasa. They might be tied by marriage to a prominent family in Zanzibar, while also maintaining close kin in Oman or Gujarat. These vast, sprawling webs of loyalty ensured a steady and reliable access to goods ivory from the African interior, spices from the east, and luxurious textiles from India. At the same time, this global reach gave them incredible leverage against local competitors who lacked such far-flung connections. And so, the Swahili coast was less a chain of isolated, rival towns and more a living, breathing web of intermarried, interdependent households. These families skillfully navigated both the intimate, personal world of kinship and the harsh, impersonal currents of global trade. Yet, these alliances came at a cost. For women especially, the weight of such unions could be heavy. A young woman might be wed not for her own wishes or desires, but purely for the strategic advantage her family could gain from the match. She might find herself living in a distant town, far from her own family, bound by the strict obligations of her new household. Her role as a keeper of the ties was carefully scrutinized, her every action judged for its impact on the alliance. Still, many women wielded quiet but significant power within these arrangements. Their ability to expertly manage large households, maintain ancient kinship rituals, and command respect in the marketplace gave them voices that could not be easily ignored. They were both the vessels of alliance and, in their own right, the makers of it. Through these intricate webs of kinship, politics, and generosity, Swahili merchant families transformed personal ties into enduring power. Their true wealth was never simply in the coins they counted or the ivory tusks stacked high in their storerooms. It was in the bonds whispered into existence through wedding vows, strengthened over shared meals, and reinforced in the quiet deliberations of town councils. And as we drift further into this story, the alliances of the Swahili coast remind us that power is not always loud or visible. Sometimes, the most formidable power is found in the quiet weaving of ties unseen yet unbreakable. like the threads of a net cast wide and deep into the vast open sea. When the sun rose over the Swahili coast, market women were always among the first to stir. Imagine this: they carry baskets heavy with fish, clay jars of water balanced perfectly, bundles of cassava and millet, and sacks of fragrant spices. Their calls fill the morning air, echoing down those beautiful coral-stone streets. Weaving through the alleys like living poetry, these women didn't just sell goods. They set the very rhythm of their towns. And even though centuries have passed, their legacy has not faded one bit. The strength of Swahili society was built, in large part, upon their shoulders. Their energy fed the great caravans that journeyed down from the African interior. Their keen eyes could judge the freshness of fish hauled from the ocean with a single glance. Their wit and gossip, their original social media kept households informed, connected, and alive with news. To speak of the Swahili coast without speaking of its women is to leave out half the heart of its history. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we can breathe in the night air together. Their influence continues, vibrant as ever, in the marketplaces of today. If you walk through Mombasa, Lamu, or Zanzibar, you'll see women arranging neat rows of mangoes, coconuts, and bright red chilies with the same pride as their foremothers. The market stall is so much more than a place of commerce. It's a stage where dignity is displayed, where the skill in arranging goods speaks as loudly as one's voice. For many, trading isn't just a way to survive. It's an inheritance. A young girl might learn how to haggle from her grandmother, repeating her phrases, mirroring her gestures. She grows up listening to the rhythm of negotiations, learning which jokes can soften a deal and which silences will seal it. By the time she stands behind her own stall, she carries the echoes of generations with her. Let's rest for a moment here, beneath the stars, just listening to the waves break softly beyond the horizon. But this legacy isn't only about commerce, it's about resilience. Swahili market women lived in societies that, at times, tried to restrict their freedom. Yet they carved out spaces where their voices mattered, where their own earnings gave them a powerful sense of independence. They negotiated with men who ruled councils, with sailors who came from faraway lands, and with the elites who held fortunes in ivory and gold. Through it all, they remained deeply rooted in their communities, feeding, nurturing, and sustaining them. In the rituals of market life, too, their legacy endures. Blessings whispered before the day begins, quiet prayers offered over coins, or protective charms hidden in the corners of stalls. These are the invisible threads tying the present to the past. Through them, the market isn't just economic ground. It becomes sacred ground. The echoes of their power reach far beyond the coast. Oral traditions across East Africa remember these sharp-tongued women who commanded respect in the bazaars, who knew everyone's secrets, who could make or break a reputation with a single sentence. There are songs and proverbs that remind us that a market without women is like a boat without sails. It's directionless, without energy, without life itself. Even in modern scholarship, historians and archaeologists are turning their gaze to potsherds, old market records, and oral testimonies, piecing together the lives of women who rarely appear in the official royal chronicles. The story of Swahili civilization is no longer told only through kings and powerful merchants. It is being rewritten with the voices of these women rising to the surface, like dhows returning to shore after long voyages. Let's pause here gently. The night air is still, and the firelight flickers as if it's remembering voices long gone. And this legacy endures in how women remain central to African markets today, from Lagos to Maputo, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Across the entire continent, it is so often women who rise before dawn, balance baskets on their heads, and fill the streets with life. They inherit that same spirit of resilience, that same skill in negotiation, and that same incredible ability to hold families together through the art of trade. The Swahili coast, in this sense, was part of a far larger African rhythm, one where women have always carried the lifeblood of economies. For the descendants of Swahili women traders, pride runs incredibly deep. To claim a grandmother who once sold fish in Zanzibar or cloth in Kilwa is to claim a lineage of strength and cunning. Their memory is stitched into family stories, into the way women speak in markets today, into the laughter and the arguments that rise above baskets of chilies and piles of shimmering silver fish. And so, the legacy of Swahili market women lingers not only in artifacts or academic pages, but in the living breath of trade itself. Each coin exchanged, each greeting spoken in the markets today, carries echoes of centuries of women who balanced fierce independence with a tender devotion. They remind us that true wealth isn't only in the goods we carry home, but in the voices, the stories, and the dignity that are passed along with them. As the night deepens, let us just sit quietly with this truth. Markets are not mere spaces of buying and selling. They are living tapestries, woven from voices, sweat, blessings, and memory, and at their heart, always stand the women. As the sun sinks behind the coral stone streets and the gentle tides of the Indian Ocean lap against the shore, we pause to remember the women who shaped life along the Swahili coast. Their voices, their laughter, their bargaining cries, all are threads in a tapestry that stretches across centuries. These threads weave together courage, ingenuity, and resilience, forming a fabric that is as enduring as the markets themselves. We have walked alongside them, felt the weight of baskets balanced atop heads, the sweat of long hours under a blazing sun, and the quiet strength of women who held entire communities together. We have glimpsed their power not only in trade, but in the rituals, stories, and customs that sustained them and that continue to echo in marketplaces today. Let us pause here. Feel the warm glow of lanterns fading into night, the quiet hum of waves, and the soft rhythm of distant drums carrying history gently into our hearts. Reflecting upon their lives, we see more than commerce. We see networks of support, systems of knowledge, and cultural ingenuity. The market women of Zanzibar, Mombasa, Lamu, and beyond were not merely participants in trade, they were anchors of society, arbiters of wisdom, and keepers of tradition. Each coin exchanged, each jar or basket handled, was a story, a lesson, a reminder of human resilience. Even today, the legacy of these women whispers through markets across East Africa. Their spirit persists in every young girl learning to sell her first wares, in elders who pass down advice and stories, and in families whose prosperity rests upon lessons learned in bustling bazaars centuries ago. And so, as the stars scatter across the darkened sky above the Swahili coast, we carry forward a sense of calm, connection, and wonder. We breathe slowly, letting the stories settle in our hearts, imagining the footsteps of market women past echoing gently through the night. Their courage, their skill, and their quiet determination remind us that history is alive in every ritual, every trade, every whispered blessing. Let's pause one last time here. The fire crackles softly, the waves lull the coast to sleep, and we rest, cradled in the warmth of these centuries-old stories. May the stories of the Swahili market women guide your dreams tonight. Their lives teach us patience, resilience, and the enduring power of human connection. As we leave the markets behind, we carry with us the wisdom of their daily battles and triumphs, a legacy that is alive, vivid, and timeless. As this day closes, let's take a moment longer with these stories, letting them sink deeper into our consciousness. The markets we've explored were more than just places of transaction. They were vibrant hubs of life, information, and social cohesion. Think of the intricate networks these women built. A sale was never just a sale. It was a reaffirmation of a relationship, a sharing of news from a distant village, a silent pact of mutual support, in a world often dominated by grand narratives of kings and conquerors. The true pulse of society was found here, in the daily, steadfast rhythm of the marketplace. Imagine the knowledge passed down from mother to daughter, not just the art of the sale, but which herbs healed, which spices preserved, and which stories carried the wisdom of the ancestors. This was a university without walls, a library without books. The currency was not just coins, but trust and reputation, earned over generations of fair dealing and quiet strength. The women were the bedrock, the constant, the silent force that ensured the community would endure through seasons of plenty and seasons of want. Their resilience was not loud or boastful. It was woven into the very fabric of their daily existence, as natural and as necessary as the tides. This legacy is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force. Today, you can still see it in the eyes of a woman meticulously arranging her produce, her hands moving with a grace born of deep-rooted knowledge. You can hear it in the shared laughter between vendors, a sound that bridges the centuries. The challenges may have changed. Modern economies bring new pressures, but the core spirit remains. The ability to adapt, to innovate, to support one another, and to find strength in community is a timeless lesson that the market women of the Swahili coast continue to teach us. So, as we let the tranquility of this coastal night wash over us, let's hold on to that lesson. In our own lives, in our own communities, we can draw inspiration from their example. We can seek to build networks of support, to value wisdom passed down through experience, and to recognize the quiet strength that often goes unnoticed but holds everything together. The stories of these women are not just about a specific place or time. They are universal tales of human endurance, connection, and the profound power found in the everyday. And now, the night deepens. The air grows still, filled only with the gentle murmur of the ocean and the distant song of the crickets. The moon casts a silver path across the water, a silent invitation to rest. Let the peace of this place, rich with history and humanity, settle into your soul. Allow your mind to drift, to wander back through the sun-drenched alleys and bustling squares, to hear the echoes of generations. The spirit of the Swahili coast, carried on the night breeze, is a lullaby of resilience. Thank you for joining us on this journey, for taking the time to listen to these important stories. The world is full of such hidden histories, and by seeking them out, we enrich our own understanding of what it means to be human. If these tales have touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel so we can continue to bring more stories from under the baobab skies to you. For now, rest well. Let the whispers of the past be the guardians of your sleep, and may you awaken with a renewed sense of connection to the world and its incredible tapestry of life. Good night. You are now under baobab skies, cradled by the whispers of history and ready to drift into gentle sleep.